grade 12 learners, welcome to today's agricultural sciences lesson. My name is Zulufezeka. This lesson is brought to you by the Northern Cape Department of Education in collaboration with Pagama Research and Development. Right, remember we are still preparing for our June examination, and that is why today we are continuing with our animal nutrition. Remember last time we did the digestion and the different digestive systems. So we are still on question 2 and revising on that and training you on how to answer the questions. So today our main focus, right, as I've already indicated, it is the animal nutrition, right? Our lesson is based on the types of feed, and our subtopic it is the nutrient components. So you need to understand that in paper 1, animal nutrition contributes for about 50 marks, right? Remember there are questions that forms part of section A, and there are questions under section B, question 2, right? So in total, animal nutrition contributes for about 20 marks. Now, learners, by the end of today, you should be able to identify 2 different types of feed for farm animals, understand the functions of each, and be able to identify them. Very important identification. Indicate the components of a feed, right? Dry matter and moisture content. Identify the deficiency symptoms of each nutrient. So what happens if an animal is in short of a nutrient? Obviously, it will suffer from a deficiency and it will start showing signs of deficiency. So you should be able to identify those symptoms, right? Understand different supplementation methods, right? Now, examination tips. Now, whenever you are answering questions that have diagrams, first rule, you must be able to read the caption or heading of a diagram, right? A heading will give you a clear picture and an understanding of what the diagram is all about. You read the caption, you read the heading of a diagram or a graph if it is a graph. Right? Analyze a diagram, a graph, or a picture, and go through the questions before answering. So you read the caption, you read the heading, you analyze the picture, and after you go through the questions before answering them. Right? When it comes to the provision of advantages or functions, learners at least are expected to know at least 3 functions of each nutrient, right? No, 3 functions of vitamin A, for an example, 3 functions of vitamin B1, and you must be able to write the deficiency symptoms of that particular nutrient. Now, when it comes to your structure of the paper that you will be writing for June examination, right, you must understand you are writing paper 1, and the duration of the paper will be 2 hours or 2.5 hours, and the questions will be based on all the topics that will be included. It is animal nutrition, animal production, protection, and control, right, animal reproduction. Now, your question consists of 2 sections. Section A and Section B. In Section A, we have question 1 that has about 45 marks. And this question, it consists of short questions, or Section A consists of short questions. And these questions, they include all the topics starting from animal nutrition, animal production, protection and control, and animal reproduction. Right, so your Section A, question 1, it is multiple choice questions. We have color A and B. We have the provision of a term and correction of an underlined term. So we will provide you with a term that is incorrect, that does not match with the description. So we are expecting you to provide the correct term or a term that matches with the description, right? And then section B, it has 3 questions, starting from question 2 up until question 4. And each question carries about 35 marks. So your question 2 is based on animal nutrition, the digestion, the calculations, different types of feed, right, etc. And then your question 3, it is based on animal production, farming systems, right, behavior, handling facilities, transportation of farm animals. And also animal health is included, right? We can name diseases, parasites, both internal and external, right? There is poisoning, metallic salt, urea poisoning, and salt poisoning. And there are also blood poisoning as well. So this is the content that forms part of your question 3, right? And the last question, of which is question 4, it has animal reproduction, where we include animal multiplication or duplication of farm animals. There are different reproductive systems, right? We have pregnancy, we have the oestrus, we have synchronization, we have parturition, abortion, dystocia, we have topics like lactation, and we also include the oestrus cycle. So these are the questions or the topics that are included or that forms part of your paper 1 that you will be writing this June in preparation for the final examination. Now let us move on to our animal nutrition revision based on the types of feed. Now, firstly, you need to understand what is a feed, right? A feed is a term that is used to, or it is a term that is used to refer, or it is a term for animal food, right? Feed is consumed by different farm animals. A term used for animal feed or for animal food. Now, there are different types of feed that are consumed by farm animals. Last, or on our previous revision, we were dealing with digestion, the breaking down of nutrients, or the breaking down of different particles of feed. Now, our focus is on the different types of feed as they are consumed by the farm animals. So there are 2 types of feed that are consumed by the farm animals. The first feed, it is the concentrate. The second feed, it is roughages. Now, we have 2 farm animals, ruminants and non-ruminants. Remember the classification. Farm animals are classified into ruminants and non-ruminants. Ruminants having the complex stomach, while non-ruminants having the simple stomach. Now, the non-ruminants, they mainly feed on the concentrate, while the ruminants mainly feed on roughages. Now, there is a difference between these types of feed, a difference. Roughages are different from concentrate when it comes to the price, comes to the volume, when it comes to the digestibility. But what you need to know is that ruminant animals, they mainly feed, they mainly consume, or primarily consume on, or they feed on roughages, while the non-ruminants primarily feed on the concentrates that are highly digestible. Now, also you need to understand that these feed, whether a feed is a concentrate or a roughage, it consists of nutrients, different nutrients, and the main nutrients that are contained by these feed Number one, we can name the proteins, we can name the carbohydrates and fats. So we have feed or feeds that are protein rich, meaning those feeds, they have more of protein because they are protein rich. And then secondly, we have feeds that are energy rich. Those feeds, they contain more of carbohydrates and fats combined, right? They have more of carbohydrates and fats than protein. Each and every feed contain nutrients. The main that we are looking at are proteins and carbohydrates and fats. A feed that contains more protein is protein rich, and a feed that contains more energy, that contains more carbohydrates and fats is energy rich. It is energy rich. Now, let us look at the concentrates. Now, firstly, concentrates are highly digestible. Now, when non-ruminants digest concentrates, most of the time, the digestibility will be above 60%, right? And these concentrates, they have a high mass, of which is weight. They have high weight. They have low volume. Reason being, they are not bulky, just like the Roughages, right? Another one, they are very expensive. Now, why are concentrates expensive? They have more digestibility. They are highly digestible. They have high total digestible nutrients that is above 60%. So that is why they are expensive. So when farm animals consume concentrates, they will obtain more nutrients as compared to the Roughages. Now, what are the functions of these concentrates that are highly digestible? Firstly, they are necessary for production, right? Not because they are protein rich or energy rich, based on the fact that they are highly digestible, right? Animals that are producing, they need more nutrients, right? Secondly, the concentrates are even necessary for reproduction. So animals that are pregnant, they need more nutrients. So that is why they are necessary for reproduction. Those are concentrates, right? And another one, concentrates are necessary for growth. They are necessary for growth because they are highly digestible. They have more nutrients that are digestible. High total digestible nutrients, TDN. Now, concentrates. Remember we said each and every feed, it contains nutrients. Now, the main nutrients that we are looking at are the proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. Now, concentrates can either be energy rich or they can be protein rich. Now, if concentrates have more, they have more carbohydrates and fats, we will conclude by saying the concentrates are energy rich because they have more carbohydrates and fats, of which carbohydrates and fats are necessary for energy, or they provide energy to farm any mass. Now, a feed that is energy rich has more fats and carbohydrates. Now, examples of feed or examples of concentrates that are energy rich, we can name the maize meal, the oatmeal, the sorghum, rye, as well as the gluten. So when animals consume these types of feed or a feed that is energy rich, they will obtain more energy or feed, there's more fats and carbohydrates. They will obtain more energy. Now, a feed also that is energy rich, it has less protein. We are not saying that the protein is not there. The protein is there, but it is less. It has more fats and carbohydrates. Now, also concentrates, they are protein rich. They have more proteins than fats and carbohydrates. Now, concentrates that are protein rich are divided into two. Please remember, they are divided into two. We have concentrates that are protein rich, but comes from the animal products. And we have concentrates that are protein rich, but comes from the plant product. Now, the concentrates that comes from animal product, they have more proteins than proteins that comes from the plant product. Meaning, animal products, they produce or they have protein that have more biological value than products that comes from plants. Meaning, we can conclude by saying animal products have more proteins than plant products that are protein rich. Now, when we are comparing the two, animals have more protein, but plants, as much as they do have protein and have enough and high, but it is not higher than protein that is contained by the animal product. I hope that makes sense. Now, concentrates that are protein rich, we can name fish meal, carcass meal, bone meal, blood meal, and dry skimmed milk. So these are the examples of concentrates that are protein rich, but comes from the animal product, right? And then concentrates that are protein rich, but comes from the plant product. Protein rich, not energy rich, protein rich. Concentrates that are protein rich, but comes from the plant product. We can name the soybean, then instead the sunflower oil cake meal, peanut oil cake meal, and the last one will be the cotton seed. So these are the examples of concentrates, protein rich and energy rich. And please, when differentiating between concentrates and roughages, understand that when identifying, once we say a feed is a meal, you must understand that a feed is a concentrate. Maize meal, it ends with meal, that is a concentrate. If a term or a feed ends with a seed, also a concentrate. But the moment a feed ends with either hay, stock, straw, or blood, we are now referring to a roughage. A maize stalk is a roughage, a maize straw, a roughage, a maize plant, also a roughage, a maize hay is also a roughage, right? So there is a difference between a concentrate and a roughage. So you must be able to identify these different types of feed for the examination or in the examination. Now let us look at the roughages. Now, roughages, another type of a feed. Roughages are bulky simply because they have a high volume. And since they have high volume, they will have low mass. Now, roughages are less digestible. They have low total digestible nutrients. Their digestibility is less than 60%. Most of the time, it is less than 60%, and that is why it has to be supplemented. Most roughages are supplemented. Why? They have less digestibility. They are less digestible. Now, what are the functions of these roughages? As much as they are less digestible, but we cannot ignore the fact that, number one, they contribute to the rumen development in young ruminants. Remember, young ruminants, those that are still suckling milk, the only compartment that is functioning, it is abomasum. Rumen, reticulum, and omasum are underdeveloped. Now, the only thing that is responsible for the development of these are the roughages. So once the young ruminants start consuming roughages, that is when the rumen will start developing, right? Another one, it contributes to the bulkiness. Now, roughages, they provide bulkiness simply because they have high volume. Also, they prevent bloating, of which bloating is the accumulation of gases such as methane and carbon dioxide. Remember, after digestion in the rumen, gases that will be produced are carbon dioxide and methane. So when ruminants consume more of roughages, very less of carbon dioxide will be produced and very less of methane will be produced. Why? The roughages, they prevent bloating, of which is the accumulation of gases. Now, also you must understand that these roughages are divided into two. We have the dry roughages and the succulent roughages. Now, dry roughages, they have less moisture content, of which is water. And when we compare the level of crude fiber, we can conclude by saying dry roughages, they have more crude fiber. But the succulent roughages, they have high moisture content as compared to the dry roughages. So they have high moisture content, those are succulent, and then dry roughages, they have less moisture content. And when you identify them, succulent are more green in color, while dry roughages are more brown in color, due to the fact that succulent, they have more moisture content, and dry roughages have less moisture content. Now, the examples of succulent roughages, we can name number one, the green lucerne, that is protein rich. Number two, we can mention silage. Now, please take note that silage, before it is provided to farm animals, it has to be prepared. Now, how do we prepare the silage? It has to be stored in an environment that is anaerobic and an environment that is free of oxygen, so that there will be the development of microorganisms, or there will be microbial activity. And after, the silage will have to be mixed with molasses to improve the palatability and the digestibility. Remember, molasses is a sugary liquid that is used to improve palatability and digestibility of roughages. An example, silage, that is a succulent roughage. Now, roughages also, they contain nutrients. Now, roughages can be protein rich or they can be energy rich. Protein rich, they have more protein than fat and carbohydrates. Energy rich, they have more carbohydrates and fat than protein. Now, examples of roughages that are protein rich, we can name lucerne, lucerne hay or lucerne, right? Clover, clover hay or clover, groundnut hay, right? There are legumes as well. Now, the energy-rich roughages, we can name maize hay. Remember, we said the moment you see that hay, a feed is a roughage. But the moment you see meal, a feed is a concentrate. You see stock, a feed is a roughage. Straw, a feed is a roughage. But maize seed, a feed is a concentrate. This is how we identify them, right? Another example of a roughage that is energy rich, right? Oat hay, and the last one will be teff. So these are the roughages that are protein rich and energy rich. Now, when it comes to the feed, a feed or different types of feed, they come in a form of a diagram, or they can come in a form of a picture, where you need to analyze the diagram, you need to analyze the picture as well, to be able to see whether this, or identify whether this is a concentrate or this is a roughage. Now let's move into our first activity of the day based on the different types of feed, right? I'll only give you about 4 minutes for this one, and then we'll come back for more remedials. Now, welcome back, learners. Now, let us look at our first activity of our revision based on different types of feed, concentrates, and roughages, and their components. Right? The information alongside shows the composition of ration for farm animals. Now, firstly, understand what a ration is. Now, a ration is a feed that is consumed by an animal in a space or a period of 24 hours in a day, right? A ration consists of different types of feed, right? It can consist of concentrates, roughages, as well as the supplements. That is a ration, right? 1.1, explain why this ration is not, or it cannot be recommended as the only source of food for lambs less than 2 weeks. Explain why this ration cannot be recommended as the only source of food for lambs less than 2 weeks. Now you have read the caption, you have analyzed the information, where you also identified that there is maize meal that forms part of the ration, sunflower oil cake meal, there is lucerne hay, as well as the oats hay. Right? Maize meal contributes about 20%, sunflower 18%, lucerne hay 60%. Oh, that is very high, right? Oats hay contributes about 10% in the composition of this ration. Now the question says, explain why this ration cannot be recommended as the only source of food for lambs less than 2 weeks, meaning these lambs are still suckling milk. They are still suckling milk. So you need to understand that when it comes to ruminants that are still suckling milk, there is only one compartment that is functioning, and that is abomasum, that only secrete the gastric juices. But a rumen, reticulum, and omasum are underdeveloped. They are not functioning. They are there, they are underdeveloped, meaning they are not functioning. And again, the rumen hasn't started secreting the microorganisms that are responsible for digesting feed that is rich in good fiber. Now, your reason for this, it is because a rumen of lamb, or of the lambs, or of a lamb, is still underdeveloped. A rumen is the one that secretes microorganisms, of which these microorganisms, they digest feed that is rich in good fiber. Now, a feed that is rich in good fiber is a roughage. Now, this feed, or this ration right here, it comprises mainly of roughages. As you can see, there is lucerne hay that contributes about 60%. That is very high. And lucerne hay is a roughage that is rich in crude fiber that can only be digested by microorganisms, or by animals that secrete microorganisms. So these lambs, they do not have a fully developed rumen. So rumen is underdeveloped. Reason number 2, they cannot digest this ration simply because this ration comprises mainly of lucerne hay that is rich in crude fiber. Because lucerne hay plus oats hay are roughages. So we have about 70% of roughages that forms part of this ration. So this type of an animal cannot digest this ration simply because it has more of crude fiber or it has more of roughages. Now 1.2, state 2 important points about lucerne hay in rations for mature ewes. Now, when a question says state, you list. You don't create your own paragraph. Don't write a paragraph. You need to list your points. Point number 1, point number 2, right? So you state, you list, you name. Now you state 2 important points. Your answers should be in a point form. Right, about lucerne hay in rations for mature ewes. Remember, we have already discussed about the functions of roughages. Now, the importance of lucerne hay, of which is a roughage. Firstly, lucerne hay is cheap and it is available. Why it is cheap? It is there to improve the functioning of the digestive system. Thirdly, it prevents bloating. Right, another one, it supply necessary bulkiness. Bulkiness being the high volume. Remember, they have high volume. So they contribute or they provide their bulkiness into the ration. So these are your answers. 1.3, identify the feed that is an example of protein-rich concentrate. A concentrate that is protein rich from a ration alongside. Now, the only feed that is protein rich and is a concentrate, it is sunflower oil cake meal. Remember, you need to identify from the ration. So you don't just create your own and start telling us about the linseed or start telling us about the soybean. No. You identify from the information that we have. So from this information, there is only one concentrate that is protein rich, and that is the sunflower oil cake meal. So you write in full, sunflower oil cake meal. So these should be your answers. Remember, your answers should match with the marks. If you have 2 marks allocated for that question, you need to mention 2 things. If there is only 1 mark, you mention just a single or you provide a single answer. Now let us move on with our revision. We are done with the different types of feed. Now, another thing that you need to remember or take note is the fact that each and every feed, whether a feed is a concentrate or a feed is a roughage, whether it is a maize meal or it is lucerne hay, each and every feed that is consumed by a farm animal has 2 components or consists of 2 things. One being the dry matter and the second one being the moisture content. Each and every feed consists of the dry matter and the moisture content. Dry matter being all constituents except water. Once water has been removed from the feed, you will be left with the dry matter. Now, another one, it is moisture content. Moisture content, another term for water. Now, what are the functions of water? That is part of the feed. Why do we need water in animal nutrition? Remember, when provided functions of water, your functions should align with the topic. They should go together with the topic, align, right? We are dealing with animal nutrition. There is no way that you can say it acts as a shock absorber. No way. Remember, acting as a shock absorber, that is animal nutrition. While here, we are providing functions as they play a role in animal nutrition, of which is the digestion. Now, the functions of water under animal nutrition. During the digestion, the breaking down of food. Firstly, water acts as a solvent. It moistens and softens. It lubricates. Another one, responsible for temperature regulation. It regulates the temperature, or you can say it maintains the temperature, right? Another one, provide the structural support. Another one, it is a medium for all chemical reaction. For digestion to take place, water is required. For transportation of nutrients, water is required. For absorption of nutrients, water is required. Excretion of undigested nutrients, water is also required. So it plays a role during the chemical reactions. Right? The last one, it transports the nutrients during absorption or during excretion or during the assimilation. When our nutrients, they move from the blood into all body cells. That is assimilation. Now let us look at the dry matter components. All constituents except water. Now, dry matter is referring to the nutrients, or another term for nutrients. Now, once water has been removed, we will be left with the nutrients. Now, the dry matter being the nutrients. Dry matter is divided into two components. Firstly, we have a part of dry matter that is inorganic. It has no combination of carbon and hydrogen, or it does not contain carbon, right? Another component, we have a dry matter that is organic, or nutrients that are organic. Now, the components or the nutrients that are inorganic, we can name the minerals. They do not contain carbon or the combination of carbon and hydrogen. Examples of organic dry matter or organic nutrients that are digested by farm animals. Firstly, we have the vitamins. Another one, fats. Another one, proteins. And the last will be the carbohydrates. So these nutrients right here, they consist of a carbon, an element called carbon. And that is why they fall under the organic nutrients. They fall under organic dry matter. So dry matter are nutrients divided into inorganic and organic. It comes in a form of a diagram, or it can come in a form of a picture or an illustration or a schematic diagram. Now, firstly, let us start with the organic nutrients or the components of organic nutrients or components of organic dry matter. Firstly, we have the protein. Protein is a nutrient that is organic. And this protein, it consists of amino acids, or it is made up of amino acids, or derived or come from amino acids. Now, amino acid that makes up protein as a nutrient that is organic are divided into essential amino acid and non-essential amino acid. Remember, when these amino acids combine, they will form protein. Protein that is in a complex form and amino acids that are in a simpler form. So in simpler words, amino acids are the building blocks of protein. For protein to exist, we need amino acids, essential and non-essential. Now, there is a difference between these two amino acids. Essential amino acids are consumed. For animals to obtain these amino acids, they need to be consumed through the food. They are not synthesized, especially by non-ruminants. Non-ruminants, they do not have the ability to synthesize the essential amino acids. But when it comes to ruminants, since they secrete microorganisms, they do have the ability to synthesize essential amino acids. So essential amino acids cannot be synthesized by the non-ruminants. They do not secrete microorganisms. That is the reason. While non-essential amino acids are synthesized by the body. They can be synthesized by both ruminants and non-ruminants. It doesn't matter whether a farm animal is a ruminant or non-ruminant. But when it comes to essential amino acids, cannot be synthesized by the non-ruminants. They do not secrete microorganisms, but they can be synthesized by ruminants. I just hope that makes sense. But all in all, the difference, essential are consumed while non-essential are synthesized by the body, by both farm animals. Now, the functions of protein necessary for production, necessary for reproduction. Production such as meat production, milk production, wool production, egg production. So animals that are producing products, they need more of protein than fats and carbohydrates. Yes, fat and carbohydrates, they need to be sufficient, they need to be enough. But at the end of the day, protein will have to be more, right? Necessary for reproduction. Animals that are pregnant or want to be pregnant, they need more of protein because protein is necessary for reproduction. And it is also necessary for growth. Animals that are still growing, they need more protein and sufficient fats and carbohydrates. Also necessary for building new tissues, especially in young animals. And it is also responsible for repairing of worn out tissues, especially on animals that are very old. It is there to repair worn out tissues because those tissues are very tired. They've been working, so they need to be repaired. And the only nutrient that repairs, it is the protein, one of the organic nutrients. Right? Let us move to another organic nutrient called the carbohydrates. Now, carbohydrates are divided into two. We have carbohydrates, or a carbohydrate that is a crude fiber, and a carbohydrate that is a nitrogen-free extract. Now, the components of a crude fiber: carbohydrate, cellulose, hemicellulose, and lignin. Please note that this crude fiber, or this part of carbohydrate, is less digestible. It can only be digested by ruminants because they secrete microorganisms. It's very difficult to digest components such as hemicellulose, cellulose, and lignin. That is why these microorganisms, they need to have an enzyme called cellulase for them to digest this carbohydrate called the crude fiber. Now, the nitrogen-free extract is a carbohydrate component that is highly digestible. Once a feed has more of this nitrogen-free extract, it will be easily digestible. Now, components or examples of nitrogen-free extract, we have the starch and the sugars that are highly digestible. Sugars that are polysaccharides and a starch that is also highly digestible. Now, the functions of carbohydrates: act as a source of energy. Secondly, they are responsible for fattening and maintaining. Once we prepare animals for slaughter, after raising them, you need to provide them with a feed that has more carbohydrates. Why? It is necessary for fattening and maintenance, maintaining body weight, right? It also provides bulkiness. Now, why do we have to include this function right here? Because a carbohydrate has a component called the crude fiber that is responsible for providing bulkiness, for providing or contributing with its volume on the feed. Now, our next organic nutrient, we have fats, right? Fats consist of fatty acids and glycerol being the building blocks, meaning without fatty acids and glycerol, there will be no fats. Now, these fats, their functions, firstly, they act as a source of energy, right? Responsible for fattening and maintenance, acts as an insulator by regulating the temperature and protecting the internal organs of farm animals, such as kidneys, right? The last function acts as a solvent for vitamin A, D, E, and K. Or we can say it acts as a solvent for fat-soluble vitamins, such as A, D, E, and K. Once these vitamins come into contact with fats, they will dissolve, or they will be dissolved, right, by fats. Not just any vitamin, but fat-soluble vitamins. So these are the functions of fats, while we are still on the organic nutrients that contain carbon. Now let us move to our second activity of the day, right, based on the different types of feed or the different types of feed and their nutrients, right? I will give you for about 7 minutes and then I will come back for remedials. Now, welcome back, learners. Now, let us look at our activity 2 solutions. Based on the different types of farm animals, based on the different types of feed, and their feed components, right? Remember the examination tip. I said when you have diagrams, you read the caption, you read the heading before you go through the diagram, right? Now, let us do that. Right, the schematic representation alongside shows types of feed. Right now, let us analyze the diagram together. Right, we have types of feed. Right, we have A and then we have B. Right, in A, it is components. Right, there is C and another component right here. It is protein rich, and an example of this component that is protein rich is fish meal. Right, when it comes to B, we have a component that is dry and then another one that is labeled D, right? Now let us go through the questions. Now classify the types of feed represented by A and B. Now, even if a question were to come and say, classify the feeds represented, because of this classification, you provide the types. It is classified into this and that. Even if there was no types, but classification in general, you classify into this and this, right? But when a question comes and say, identify the type, there is also classification. But if a question were to say, identify the feed, there is not a classification. You give us the name, or you provide us the name of the feed, right? 2.1, you classify types of feed, or you classify the feeds represented by A and B. Now, A is a concentrate and B is a roughage. Remember, you have analyzed the diagram, and then you were able to tell that A is a concentrate and B is a roughage. Why do we say it is a concentrate? One of the components of A is a fish meal. Remember, when a feed ends with meal, it is an indication that it is a concentrate. And here we have dry. Remember, we said concentrates are divided into dry and exactly. So you need to remember, right, when analyzing those diagrams, right? Identify C above. So C is energy rich. Now, why C is an energy rich? Remember, concentrate can be energy rich or protein rich. So there is no way that you can also write like an answer being the protein rich. There is no way. So a feed can either be protein rich or energy rich. Now let us move to 2.3. State two functions of B in animals. State functions of B in animals. You remember the answer was just generalizing and said in animals, right? So the functions of B, remember we said B is a roughage. Responsible for rumen development, provide bloating, provide bulkiness, and stimulates fats in milk production. It stimulates fats in milk production. When animals that are lactating, that is animal reproduction, right? When animals that are lactating consume more of roughage, remember roughage is rich in crude fiber, right? Now, when a crude fiber is being digested, don't forget that when a crude fiber is being digested, it will be digested into fatty acid and glycerol. So when an animal that is lactating, producing milk, consume more of crude fiber, that when it is digested, it produces fatty acid and glycerol. Obviously, an animal will produce more milk that has more fat. Why? It consumes more of crude fiber or roughage that is rich in crude fiber. I hope that makes sense. Right? 2.4. Give two feed examples of D. Give two feed examples of D. Now, when you look at the component of B, now B is not divided into protein rich and energy rich. It is just divided into dry and D being the succulent, not the energy rich, but being the succulent. Right. So the examples of D, we can name green leucine, we can name silage that is grown or stored under an anaerobic environment, right? We can name the green fodder. So these are the three examples of feed or roughage that are referred to as the succulent that have more moisture content. Now let us continue with our revision. We are still on organic nutrients. Remember, we have done protein, we have done carbohydrates, we have done the fats, and then now we are moving to the vitamins. Now, vitamins, understand that they are different. Now, we have vitamins or vitamins that are fat-soluble when we are classifying them or grouping them, and we have vitamins or vitamins that are water-soluble. Now, vitamins that are fat-soluble, they dissolve in fats, or they can only dissolve in fats. And those that are water-soluble, they can only dissolve in water. Now, examples of fat-soluble vitamins, we have vitamin A, D, E, and K. Now, vitamins are different from proteins, carbohydrates, and fats, simply because when you are studying them, you need to know the identification, obviously, right? You need to know the functions and the deficiency symptoms, not just anything that is similar to the proteins, right? You understand the functions, not only the functions, but also the deficiency symptoms of each and every vitamin. Now let us look at the fat-soluble vitamins called A, D, E, and K. Now, vitamin A is also referred to as retinol. So when you see retinol, think of vitamin A. Now, vitamin A, we all know it deals with sight, it deals with the skin, it deals with the fertility. So those are the functions. Now, firstly, the functions, it deals with an eyesight. It improves the eyesight of farm animals, especially at night. It enables the farm animals to see, especially at night. It also deals with the fertility. Animals become fertile when they consume more of vitamin A. And it also deals with healthy skin. It provides with animals with healthy skin, or it improves healthy skin. Now, what's the deficiency? The shortage. Now, if an animal is in short of vitamin A, it will show various symptoms, and these symptoms are referred to as the deficiency symptoms. Now, deficiency symptoms that are shown by an animal that lacks vitamin A, that is in short of vitamin A, right? Firstly, we can just write night blindness. Now, it's very important to mention this night. Remember, it improves the eyesight, especially at night. So, the deficiency symptom will be the night blindness, right? Secondly, there will be lowered fertility or reproduction, right? There will be a rough hair coat. The coat will be rough, the coat will be dark, of which is the skin. Now let's move into vitamin D. Now, vitamin D plays a role on the absorption of phosphorus and calcium, of which these two minerals, they deal with the formation of bones, strengthening bones, and teeth. Now, the deficiency symptoms, right? There will be osteomalacia, the weakening of bones in farm animals, especially older animals, right? Number 2, there will be rickets, the bow legs in young animals. So it is young animals that mostly suffer from the rickets, the bow legs or the bow legs, right? Another vitamin that forms part of a fat-soluble vitamin, it is vitamin D that prevents the stiffening of muscles, or that prevents the muscular dystrophy. Dystrophy being the stiffness of muscles. Now, vitamin E, blood circulation, and the prevention of muscular dystrophy. I've already indicated what a muscular dystrophy is, right? The deficiency symptoms will be the stiff limb disease, of which is the muscular dystrophy, meaning animals will suffer from the stiffness of muscles or the stiffening of muscles. Vitamin K, it is responsible for blood clotting. It forms blood and prevents excessive bleeding in farm animals, right? And then deficiency symptoms will be excessive bleeding. It will bleed, an animal will bleed until it dies, right? Another one will be the anemia, right? It will be in short of iron, or it will have the shortage of blood, right? Due to excessive bleeding. So these are your functions and deficiency symptoms that you should look for in your paper or your junior examination. Remember, it comes in a form of a diagram, or it can come in a form of a table, or it can come in a form of a picture, where in a picture you see bow legs, or you see like weakening of muscles, or you see various deficiency symptoms. So you analyze the pictures, and then you identify a vitamin, right, that is in short, and you also provide the deficiency symptom that is shown by the picture. Now, let us move again into water-soluble vitamins. Now, examples of water-soluble vitamins: vitamin B1, vitamin B2, vitamin B6, and vitamin B12. So these vitamins, most of them, they deal with, right, the maintenance, they deal with the metabolism of various minerals, such as calcium, such as various minerals or various nutrients in general, right? Now, these vitamins or vitamins, that can only dissolve in water. That is why they are called the water-soluble vitamins. Now, vitamin 1 or vitamin B1 is also referred to as thiamine. So in the exam, they can provide you with a term or word, thiamine, and then you should know that thiamine is vitamin B1. Now, this thiamine deals with neurological functions, how nerves are functioning, right? It also maintains the functioning of muscles. Now, the deficiency symptoms, right? An animal will suffer from polyneuritis, or there will be a lowered fertility, right? Or the muscles will not be able to work properly. They will be stiff, right? Vitamin B2 is also referred to as riboflavin. Now, this riboflavin is responsible for the development of antibodies that are there to boost the immune system so that it will fight against or stand against diseases. So you already know the deficiency symptoms, right? It also deals with the healthy skin. It also deals with the metabolism of glucose, how glucose is digested and absorbed, how it is assimilated in the body, right? The deficiency symptoms, it would be the lowered resistance against diseases. Remember, once there is no vitamin B2, there will be no development of antibodies. As a result, the immune system will be weak. It will not be able to stand against diseases or be resistant against diseases, right? The animal will suffer from dermatitis, right? Dermatitis being the skin rash, right? Another one, there will be curled toe paralysis, right? Curled toe paralysis, especially in chickens, not just any farm animal, but in chickens, there will be toes that are curled. That is curled toe paralysis, right? Another vitamin, it is vitamin B6. Now, vitamin B6 is responsible for the metabolism of nutrients such as the glucose, right? Metabolism such as fats, metabolism such as the amino acids, right? The animal will suffer from epilepsy, where brain cells will be damaged, or there will be the degeneration of brain cells, and the spinal cord will also be affected or negatively affected, and there will be a reduced, right, or a reduced reproduction, right? The last vitamin B6, it is cobalamin. Now, cobalamin, it deals with the metabolism of fats and carbohydrates, or the metabolism of nutrients that are energy rich. Now, where an animal will suffer from, right, a wasting disease, right, pining, or it will suffer from the staggering. It will not be able to walk, or it will suffer from, again, from excessive loss. So these are the functions and deficiency symptoms you should look for in the examination. Now let us move again into our activity 3 of the day based on the feed component. I will only give you about 5 minutes and then I will come back for remedials. Right, welcome back, learners. Now let us look at our activity 3 of the day based on revision or based on feed component. Remember, examination tips, read the caption or the heading. You already know that. Complete the table below by naming the mineral, vitamin, and deficiency symptoms. Remember, I told you, functions or deficiency symptoms, you must know these things, right? Write only A to E, right? You provide answers from A to E, or you answer A to E, right? Now, complete the table alongside by naming the mineral, vitamins, and deficiency symptoms. Now, A, there is parakeratosis, right? We need a vitamin or a mineral that causes a deficiency symptom such as parakeratosis, and that will be zinc, right? That is a mineral, right? And then for vitamin A, B, you need to provide the deficiency symptoms that is night blindness, right? For cobalt, you provide the deficiency symptoms that will be the wasting disease, right? For D, you provide the mineral or the vitamin that will be vitamin K, right? And the last one, you also provide the mineral or vitamin that is causing anemia, and that will be iron. So this is how you must answer these kind of questions. So some of these answers are minerals and some are vitamins. Remember, we've already covered vitamins in term 1. So you know the answers. Come on, you know the answers. Now let's move into our last activity of the day, right? Based on the feed component as well. I will give you 3 minutes and then we'll move on to our next slide or next lesson. Right, welcome back to our last activity of the day based on the different types of feed or the feed components. Right, name the components of feed most suitable for each of the following. Remember, it is a component of a feed. A feed has 2 components, dry matter and moisture content. Right, it acts as a solvent. There will be water, water or moisture content. We can also accept moisture content, right? Fattening of farm animals for slaughter, and there will be carbohydrates, or we can also include fats because fats, they also provide energy, right? Easy absorption of fat-soluble vitamins and calcium. Come on, that will be fats. So these are your answers. Remember, we're dealing with the feed components. Components, dry matter, moisture content. Dry matter, moisture content. Dry matter being the nutrients, right? So this will be your homework, right? I hope you'll be able to complete this without me, right? You analyze the diagram, you provide the answers. Remember, you follow the instructions at all times. For you to obtain marks, follow the instructions. Where you are expected to provide one answer, provide one answer. For 2 marks, you provide 2 answers. So let us look back on our today's activity. Right, it is based on the different types of feed, not farm animals, right? Concentrates and roughages and their components, right? Components such as moisture content and dry matter, right? Functions of water, we've already covered that, right? Organic nutrients, we've covered organic nutrients such as the vitamins, right? Proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. And we'll cover on our next lesson the inorganic nutrients. Example of that will be the minerals, right? And then on our next lesson, we'll look at the feed components, or we'll complete or continue with the feed components that are inorganic, right? The inorganic nutrients, right? As well as their supplements. Whenever there is a shortage, we need to supplement. And we'll also focus on the calculations. They carry a large amount of marks. So we'll focus more on the calculations, right? All of them, such as biological value, digestibility coefficient, nutritive ratio, energy flow, as well as the fodder flow program. So learners, we have come to the end of our lesson. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Please do not forget to study. Remember, our benchmark is 50 marks, nothing less. 50 and above, and we're working towards 100% and a lot of distinctions. Remember, our average should be 60 and above. So please do not forget, you study, and you study. Remember, when you work hard work yields greater results. So let us see each other or one another on our next lesson based on the calculations. So thank you so much. Stay blessed.